Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner with us as always to talk all things markets. University of Missouri, Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
Welcome to the heat dome.
Yeah, you must have brought the heat back with you from your trip west.
It was 72 and sunny with like zero humidity in San Diego. I'm pretty sure I am not responsible for triple degree temperatures.
I think the humidity is near zero here. It's either 0 or 1.
No, not in Kentucky. It's about 500% humidity. I don't know. It's miserable is just the only word that I can use to describe temperatures at this point. I will say we laid over in Phoenix last night and it was 117 on the ground, and really feeling some empathy and sympathy for ground crews who were hustling and bustling to get flights in and out, but it is definitely a warm one.
That's for sure.
All right, just a little bit for us to chat about this week. We'll talk cold storage numbers, and that's about it. But to kick things off, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, Megan, this week on the cattle side, live fed cattle were about 40 cents higher this week. Those feeder cattle markets were anywhere from steady to $3 lower on the week. When you look at the futures side, August live cattle futures contract was down nearly $1.60. The feeder cattle contract for August was basically unchanged on the week. We lost 75 cents on the choice box beef price. That still puts it about $35 above where it was a year ago at this time. On the hog side, cash hogs again higher this week, up nearly $2. August lean hog futures were also higher, up about $2.35, and the pork cutout value gained 57 cents, which all was on the back of bellies this week, as almost everything else was lower in those pork cutout components.
And we'll talk a little bit more about bellies coming up in a little bit in our cold storage report. Let's talk about slaughter numbers this week and how things are stacking up. I'm assuming maybe the weather's having something to do with that as well.
Yeah, so if you look at the cattle side this week, USDA is telling us for the week ending July 29th, a run of 619,000 head of cattle. That's 5,000 less than what we did last week and 47,000 less than what we did a year ago. And on the hog side, a run this week of 2.392 million head of hogs. That's 76,000 head more than a week ago, and a mere 100,000 head more than what we did last year at this time.
Let's talk a little year to date as we compare cattle and hogs year over year.
Yeah, so we now are down 3.9% year to date on cattle slaughter. And on the hog side, we are up 1.3%.
When you look ahead to the rest of 2023, as we turn another month into August, how do you anticipate those slaughter numbers moving through the rest of the year?
Yeah, so I think we continue to get tighter in terms of what's happening on the cattle side of the equation. Hogs, I think we continue to have decent runs here, and we may end 2023 with almost where we sit today of terms of percentage change relative to a year ago. So 4% less cattle slaughter, and I don't know, 1 to 1.5% increase in hog slaughter seems to me to be where we're headed, given what we have for the remainder of this year.
Cold storage is the big report. The only report out this week as we take a look at beef and freezers. How are things shaping up?
Yeah, so USDA said we had 412 million pounds of beef in freezers at the end of June. That's 20.3% below where we were a year ago. So it tells you a big change on the beef side. You know, we started January of this year, we were up 1.6%. Relative to January of a year ago. So we're kind of continuing this march to tighter supplies, which ought to be positive for us. I'll say even when you go back pre-COVID here for a minute, 2015 through 2019, June numbers relative to this year, we're down 6.7% right now. So we're even getting below kind of those levels we would have had pre-COVID. Similar story on the pork side for the most part. Total pork in freezers, 490 million pounds. That's 9.1% below where we were a year ago in June. And we started 2023 on the pork side with 19.5% more pork in cold storage. And relative to that 2015 to 2019 period, we're down 17.2%. Now, bellies sticks out here. However, I think it's important to look at the trend here. So pork bellies in June, 32.7% above a year ago. We started January of this year up 56.6%. So yes, we're still up double digits. We've been slowing that growth relative to where we were over the 2015 to 2019 period. We're up 47.4% in terms of bellies.
Are we looking at things kind of leveling off then as the year has progressed?
I think so. I guess as I look ahead, for me, it's more focused now on the demand side of the picture. And I say that I still think there's differences between beef and pork, and this is all supply driven. So we're going to continue to push a lot less beef supplies at consumers for the remainder of the year, slightly more pork supplies. I think that if domestic demand doesn't stay reasonable here, we could not be as excited about the prices we end up with here for the remainder of this year. So to me, demand kind of holds the key, and there's been some good things from the demand side. So I want to be careful about being too negative, but I just come back to say downside risk in these markets again. And I'll just point out pork and where we sit May, June, early June of this year and where we sit today are very different things. And let's not let these higher prices get away from us. I think we're just going to continue to move higher. Futures markets suggest we're going to go down for the remainder of this year on the hog side of the equation, but futures markets could also still be too optimistic relative to where we end up 2023.
I think we, as we wrap up today, because we just don't have a lot of reports this week, I think we probably still need to talk a little bit about what's going on weather-wise. There's been the latest drought improvement, or the drought monitor showed some slight improvement in parts of the country. There's still a lot of dark red in the central part of Missouri. How is that stacking up on the cattle side of things to what happens with producers and liquidation, or maybe a slowdown in some cull or some movement of cattle or into different parts of the country?
Yeah, so I think hay prices in particular have certainly been at levels that aren't encouraging much expansion. Just the uncertainty about weather going forward. So for me, one of the things that seems perhaps a little different this time when we talk about just dry weather areas, it's so variable as you move around. So the drought monitor might suggest a fairly strong drought happening. Yet I think when you get into the individual farm level, you can go just a few miles and find pasture in good shape, and yet a few miles away a pasture in terrible shape. The local variability seems pretty strong at this point in time. And I'll say on top of that, I think with these high cattle prices, you have some producers maybe making the choice it's time to retire and get out of the business. So I think all of that just says we're going to really slow how quickly we expand this time, and we'll have to continue to say, although we have record cattle prices or have had record cattle prices, we don't have record profits. The cost side continues to be high, and I think that's slowing any interest in trying to expand, and weather's just adding to the uncertainty. And I'll tell you what, the 102 with furnace-like winds blowing today, I don't think gets too many folks excited about thinking they want to add cows right now.
I don't think it gets a lot of corn growers excited or soybean growers excited about a record crop either. And I know that that plays a longer term impact on those input prices and profitability.
For sure. So, if you look, USDA is still saying, and I'll stick with corn here for a minute. It's still saying a 480 2023 2024 corn price. I hope that's what we get from a livestock perspective, not from a crops perspective, but from a livestock perspective, then I think hog and cattle prices look better. It's amazing. We've kind of gotten ourselves used to these higher prices maybe being normal, and maybe they're gonna stay with us for a long time. But pre-2020, we had sub $4 corn. It just takes a very different level of livestock prices if you're going to talk about corn that stays 550 or above. And so I think it is important to say we don't know what that corn crop looks like. Just like we have talked about the variability in pastures, I think there's a lot of variability in corn and now, soybeans, where we're probably going to be trying to make a soybean crop here in the next 4 to 6 weeks. What we ultimately get in the bin, we can still run crop prices higher or feed costs higher, which would not be so great for the livestock industry.
Scott, as we wrap up today, next week, we're going to talk restaurant performance, jobs report, and also land values. What are some things you're watching for in those reports?
Yeah, so I think, again, the demand side's the big picture here. So what do we get out of jobs? What do we get out of the restaurant index? How can we see what consumers are willing to spend out of pockets for meat here for the remainder of 2023? I can see some data that would suggest sales are slowing. And so I'm focused on what those demand reports can give us. And I think we'll key on those here for the remainder of this year.
Scott, it's always great to see you. Here's to a break in this heat and some continued consistent rainfalls through the next weeks and months ahead.
I hope that's what we get.
It's just what I said. I'm going to say every day. I just hope there's rain and cooler temperatures. All right, Scott, we will talk to you next Friday.
Sounds good, Megan.
Forever Weekly Livestock Market Update delivered your email box every Saturday morning. Go to brownfieldagnews.com. You can also submit questions and comments. And for market updates daily with the commodity markets, make sure to check out John Perkins' Market Minute. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.